Okay, so we're back. Now we will be looking at how to create a personnel, how to hire a new personnel within the Blade Enterprise ERP. Now to do this quickly, we'll get to the modules by your left. We go to Human Capital, Personnel Management, Administration, HR Master Data. So under there we will see a list of options. You can see display data, maintain data, personnel actions, and personnel file. Since we want to hire a personnel, we will be selecting on the personnel action. So we just double click on this and it comes up. And so now we are here. Now I'll just quickly take us through this screen because it's a very familiar screen and we'll be coming across it a lot more often within the application. So down here is the results page, our search criteria that we use, that we filter within the system. The results that are generated will be displayed here. We can see a little button down here. When I click this, it refreshes and gives me the current list of entries here, and we can see that there are 1 to 51 entries here. So it will page them. If you have a lot more records, it will show them in batches of maybe say 100 per batch, and so on. And so we'll see the number of pages within the group. Then here we have a basic search and the enhanced search. So the basic search can be used to search for information within the record list. So if we are looking for some properties of the object, we can use a basic search to search for it. But the enhanced search is far more powerful. It allows us to search across the full properties of the objects. The objects we are referring to now in this case are the personnel numbers, the personnel that have been hired within the system. So just to take us through it quickly, we will just click on the enhanced search and you can see now it lists all the information types for which we can search. We can see them all here quickly, and then we can select one of the options. So for example, we are looking for maybe personnel with bank details, or maybe a particular information, say a personnel where the name is like so let's look for the personnel data information. We just click on this and we see all the options from which you can make a filter. And so we can just select the first name. We just select this and the option automatically comes in, and then we can say, so the query now is where the first name is, we can say equal to, or is like, starts with, or it ends with, or it is equal to, just like we were before. So in this case, I'm looking for a personnel where the first name starts with. There are some other options there. Starts with Victor. I can just type in here Victor. And when I'm ready, I'll just click on the query option, and this will automatically filter the result set that match Victor. So you see that this can quickly become elaborate because we can now come down and make some other filters. So we can decide to search where the organizational assignment has some particular properties. So maybe the payroll area within the organizational assignment is a particular value. So in this case, we could say where the payroll area is 10. I'll try and filter and see if we get anything now. So we don't get any results. So we essentially get the idea. I can delete a filter by clicking on this. I delete the filter. If I do a query again, we get a new set of entries. And so this can continue like this. We can build our list, our query list, and then the system is going to select them all and use them as the filters when trying to select the result set that will be returned. And we can decide to save this filter. So we can click on the save here. We can enter a name. We can enter a name. And we save. And once this is done, I can close this screen. You can see that automatically the filters are applied. You can see that there are 20 entries, and then there is a little bulb here. This bulb signifies that there are search filters currently active. So if I want to recall a previous filter I had used, I'll go back to the enhanced search, and I'll just come down here by your right, and then load the filter. By clicking on this, you can see my personnel filter. Once I select this, it loads back my original filter, and I can query and even modify it as the case may be. If I don't want to have a filter again, I can click on the remove save filter to take it out. Okay, so that's that about getting used to the search page. It's very robust and very flexible, and helps us to be able to search by all the properties of the personnel. We will come to the properties of personnel shortly, where we talk about the information types. They essentially identify storage components for the personnel. So, for example, a personnel that has been hired would have various information types. These information types will now store information that are relevant to that personnel. So, without wasting much time, we want to go through a hiring process. We want to hire. So we'll just select hire and proceed. And so it takes us to the initial personnel actions page. Now the personnel actions page is configured to respond to the actions we had selected in the previous page. And so that's why you can see the action and the action reason. Very important. Here you can see it says hire, and it gives us the reason for the hire action. It says this is a new season. And then some other properties that are displayed here. We have the employment status. In other words, this employee that we're going to be hiring is going to be made active within the application. And then we can see the effective date. The effective date indicates the date at which the hiring process is effective, or in other words, when does this staff start to become, or when does his information become relevant within the system. So I'll just backdate this a bit so we are not forced to work with a real-time record. So let's say December 1st of December 2016. Let's assume that this is the date the personnel is being hired. Now I could ordinarily enter the employee ID if I had the employee ID, but if I don't have it, the system will automatically generate an ID for me. And if we need to keep, say for example, the personnel is being identified in a different system, and we want to keep an alternative ID so that we can use to match between this system and a different system, we can enter that here. So now just go on to fill in these fields. The required fields are, you see a red check here that indicates that the fields are required. And as you can see, the action that we are supposed to execute, the execute flow, is disabled. Now it is disabled because the form is intelligent, and it will only enable this action when all the required fields have been captured. So we'll just enter a name. Let's say we're trying to hire Peter. The first name, we can set the initials to O, and then the last name will be let's use the local name Akindayo. And then we can select the name format. In other words, how do we want the name to be represented in standard text, in reports and all that. Select standard name, and we can click on this to give us a preview of what the standard name looks like. So it tells us it will be displayed as Mr. Peter Akindayo. Then we can also select the position for which the resource person is being hired. We select the position. We'll get the list of positions that have been defined within the system. So we'll just select one, Information Technology Director. And then the personnel area is more like the geographical location where this personnel is being hired into. In this case, we'll just select Lagos. And then this is the branch, the sub area, or the branch in which the personnel is being hired, say Victoria Island. The employee group identifies the grouping. So, is this staff going to be active? Is it a contract? Is it an intern? Or depending, this is purely flexible and it depends on your personal organizational preferences. You can define these accordingly. So, we set this guy as active, and then the subgroup within that active group. And so, you're saying this is a salaried staff. And so, with this, you can see that the actions button is now enabled, the execute flow. Now once I click this, it will automatically commence the hiring process. And within the Blade system, the hiring process is defined by the sequence of pages that are required to capture the informations that represent the complete hiring process. Now these pages would always be different depending on the organizational structure, their own processes, their implementation and design, as the case may be. So within this, the system comes with a predefined set of options, but they are purely customizable and can be retrofit to meet the specific requirements of the system. So in this case, we'll just click on execute flow, and this commences the hiring. It now takes us to the next page. This is now the personnel data. And we are coming here, is carrying over some of the information from the previous page for us here, and we just need to fill in a few required fields. So for example, information like marital status, we'll just select his marriage, separated. In this case, we just say married, and then the gender, say male, and then we can try to set the date of birth or the marriage status date, the date he got married or divorced, as the case may be. And once we are done, the save option becomes enabled, and we just select this, and then it takes us to the next piece of information that we need to capture for the hiring process, and that is the organizational assignment. Now the organizational assignment is one of the most important information types that are relevant to personnel management, because it captures the details of the working conditions of that staff. It also captures the information about what he's going to be, where he's going to work, and the kind of job he's going to be doing, and all that. In this case, we set the cost center. The cost center is used purely for cost accounting. When payroll is being run, we want to be able to account for costs to various cost centers. So we just select technology in this case. Then the payroll area is used to determine when payroll will be run for this personnel. So it is very possible that within the same department or the same company or the same branch, the same staffs within that branch are being paid differently. So some could be paid monthly, some could be paid weekly, some could be paid twice a week, twice a month, and the case may be. In this case, we just select monthly. We can decide to fill in all the other gaps, but for now we're just filling the required fields, and we just go ahead and say save. You remember the save action would only be enabled when all the required fields have been filled in. So now it brings us to this page where we are expected to fill in the image, the details of the image of the personnel. Now you remember that at any point in time, if we feel that we do not have enough information to proceed, we can easily skip that option and come back later after the hiring has been completed to refill it. So in this case, let's assume we are not able to capture the image at this point. We will just say done, and to skip this and take us to the next page. In this case now, the next page is planned working time. So we just go ahead. The planned working time defines the work schedule. So we find in scenarios where the employee has to work maybe a night shift, or has to work 3 days on, 3 days off, or whatever the shift schedule of the company is, the Blade ERP allows you to define a customizable workflow schedule, a work schedule, and then your employees can be distributed across that work schedule accordingly. So for now, we'll just select one of the defined options, flex time, and once I select that option, it fills in the standard requirements of that work schedule, and I can easily adjust this. So for example, a staff that works maybe a part-time staff that works maybe 4 hours a day as against a full day, I can come in here and change it from 8 to 4, and the system automatically recomputes the new values for us. Now this is very important because this also affects how payroll for the personnel will be computed. So it will be computed as a fraction of what is specified here. So for example, the system automatically identifies that this employee is being employed for 50% of his work schedule, and so when payroll is being run, only 50% of the basic pay is going to be captured for this employee. I can select a working week. Let me just set a default working week and fill in as now. You should remember that these fields are purely customizable, and in a subsequent tutorial we'll be looking at how you can configure the various options and customize the system to meet our specific requirements. So we just go on to save. And now we are done with that. It takes us to the bank details. So here we capture the details of the bank payment that will be made to this personnel. So in this case, you can just set the payment, the payee. In this case, we just set it to Traisoft Technologies. You can set the country where the bank is domiciled. I think for now we just have Nigeria defined. So we'll just select Nigeria, and then we'll get a list of banks that have been defined for Nigeria. We'll set UBA. Now we can select the payment method, whether we're being paid by check, bank draft, or whatever the case may be. They have their various configuration options. This can be configured as well. So we'll just select check, and then we enter the account number. Let's say 007982213. I think it should be 10 digits. Yeah. And then the purpose, we just write salary payment. Now the Blade system is able to pay in multiple bank accounts. And how do we achieve that? We do that by specifying the payment ratio. We select the payment currency, Nigerian Naira. So now we can either select a standard value or a standard percentage. So if we want payroll to pay all the salaries in one account, then we can just put in the standard percentage, 100%. But if we would like to have say payment in a different account, so we want payment to be split across multiple accounts, we can then specify the ratio here. If we would like a specific amount, say maybe out of his total salary, let 20,000 be paid to this particular account, we can then enter the standard value here, and then when payroll is run, that specific amount will be deducted from the rest of the payment and made to this specific bank account. So with that, we just go on, we save, and if we have no problems, it will take us to the next transaction. Now this is the basic payment. Now as you can see, the system has automatically defaulted for us some wages. Now these have been configured within the system. I can either remove them or I can add new wages. I can come down here, clicking on this button, and click here to add a new wage. Basically, the wages are used to define how or the compensation that the staff will be paid. Now you can define as many wages as you want. The system is very robust and very flexible to allow you capture as many wages as you need to enter. So but first of all, we select the pay scale. The pay scale defines the grouping of the employee within the company. So we say this is a union worker, and we'll look at the collective agreement. The agreement in this case lies in Lagos, so we just select Lagos, and from these two options we are able to select the grade and the level. So we need to have specified the pay scale type and the pay scale area. Basically, what this allows us to do is to classify our staff, our personnel, our employees in such a way that we can give them different grades depending on their grades or their types or their areas. So it gives a very, very robust and flexible disposition to, to play around with, to get the kind of flexibility that you'll be comfortable with. So we just select this, and then we have a list of options that have been predefined. Remember, you can always define new ones, or as well take out everything and put in what you want that is specific to your enterprise. And then we select the pay scale level. We set this. Now we can decide to fill this in. Now this has been captured from the planned work time that we came from. It has automatically identified that this is the number of working hours we are engaging in per month. And so what that means is that whatever we are specifying in this basic pay, the wages we are specifying here are going to be divided by the ratio of the work time to determine the effective payment that will be made to this employee. So in this case, we can just fill in the wages. So we can say, okay, for housing allowance, we are paying 100,000. We don't. In some other cases, you might want to fill in these numbers, but for these wages specifically, we just need to fill in the amounts. The currencies are not necessary because the system is going to pick the currencies automatically when running payroll. So for the salary, we say it's 250,000. Now remember that these values are per period. So in this case, since we are doing a monthly period, these values are the monthly pays. So if you are doing a weekly, you need to bear in mind that whatever your payment schedule is, the system will take these values as payments per period. So if you're paying weekly, or you're paying twice a month, or you're paying once in 2 weeks, whatever values you are putting here are payments for. They are known as the nominal payments for those periods. So you need to bear that in mind while capturing these entries. Okay, so we can say transport allowance is, just put in the figure here. And so now we are good. Now we can just refresh this, and the system will give us an idea of what the total per annum looks like. Okay, this is supposed to come up. Okay, I think I need to save before this comes up. So once we are done, we still have a field. Okay, so I need to put in the capacity. So the field is still grayed out. So I know I need to fill in a field. So just put in 100 here, the capacity utilization, and then the field is up. So you can now save this. And this is the last. So now it tells us a wage type is required. Oh, the wage type is required. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so I see what happened here. We have an empty field. Oh, my mistake. Okay, so that was a mistake. So I just deleted that field, and so this should go now. So that is good, and that goes. So now it's submitted it, and the transaction has completed. And so if we come down here, we should remember we need to clear this filter, otherwise we won't see the results we just captured. So now that I've cleared, you can see we now have 52 records. And when we scroll all the way down, we are looking for Peter Akindayo, if I remember correctly. Now, so this could get, a bit complex here. This is the number here, and the system has given him an ID. Now, if, for example, for any reason I couldn't find him, maybe because the records are so many, you remember your enhanced search would always be able to do justice to that. We can always use that to filter through the volume of information to get down to the specific pieces of records that we are looking for. So in the next tutorial, we'll be looking at how to manage these pieces of information that we've captured, information that we call the info types. We'll be looking at how to administer them, make modifications, and then essentially we'll be introduced into the time dependent sequence that I